Welcome to Transform Now, the podcast brought to you by robotic process automation pioneer Blue Prism. Digital transformation has the potential to reshape the way companies service their customers, engage their employees, and manage their operations. Whether you're looking to develop strategies, tactics, and best practices to positively impact the future of work, or you're curious to learn how other companies have successfully navigated their digital transformation programs, then this podcast is for you. We're here to help you transform now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Transform Now podcast. I'm your host, Michael Marchuk, and today we have a special guest, Dan Ternes, the CTO for the Asia Pacific region for Blue Prism. Dan, I am so happy to have you here on the show today.
It's wonderful to be here as well, Michael. Thanks for inviting me.
I'm glad you're able to make it. Dan, you're not a stranger to the RPA market and RPA and intelligent automation. You've been doing this for a little while. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. I have been doing it for a little while, actually. I joined Blue Prism literally right on 4 years ago, actually. Interesting anniversary. So I've been at Blue Prism for a long time. Even prior to that, actually, prior to Blue Prism, I was working for a consulting company. This is sort of 2016, 2017. And within that consulting, of course, at that time, RPA was really starting to take hold. We focused on the financial services industry, was really taking hold in financial service. And people within the consulting organization said, we need to get into RPA. I was shocked because I'd never heard of it. Never heard of it. My background, I had a big background in business process automation, big background in sort of integration. How have I never heard of this stuff? And so that was my first sort of introduction to RPA. We did a lot of analysis of how do we build an RPA practice in the market. And then as luck would have it, I got introduced to people at Blue Prism. Actually, I knew a lot of the people at Blue Prism, and the opportunity came to join here, and never look back.
That is awesome. And we're glad you joined because you've been a fantastic addition to our entire organization. So really appreciate that you're here. Now, over the past few years, we've been seeing this slow shift in the way that companies are approaching automation from simply adopting automation to automate the mundane or menial work towards more of integrating automation at the core of their business. What are your thoughts on this kind of shift towards that?
I've never liked the term mundane and menial. I've never liked it. I think mundane and menial, that phrase, it conditions organizations to look for the wrong sort of things to automate. In general, mundane and menial doesn't roll up into tangible ROI, okay? It doesn't roll up into sort of concrete improvements in that corporate performance. And I think that matters. I think that you can certainly say that mundane and menial can translate into improved employee experience, and that's a good thing. But I think that even with a different focus on what I want to automate, I think I can create an even better and more enduring employee experience. So I don't like mundane and menial. I think it translates into slivers of time, saving slivers of time, a few minutes here, a few minutes there. And, we can extend that period of time long enough, then that will roll up to some impressive figures. I've said 50,000 hours, but that's just mathematical shenanigans, mathematical gymnastics. It's the illusion of ROI. It doesn't say, what did I get for my time? And I think that mundane and menial has a flow-on effect to widespread adoption. So I've never liked the term. I think it conditions people to look at the wrong sort of things, and the right sort of things to be looking at are things that are core business. And I'd even say it's not things that are core to the business. I'm just playing with words there, but it's actually core business. It's automating scenarios that are central, if you like, to what is the main mission of the organization. So, if I'm a bank, it's loan origination, that sort of stuff. It's customer onboarding. It's things like customer experience, hardship applications, or customer problems. If I'm an insurance company, it's claims, it's policy renewals. If I'm a government, it's citizen services. Okay. If I'm an energy company, it's, identity theft and revenue leakage, things that are really core to the business. Right? Those are the scenarios that really do drive corporate performance, has real impact to the organization. And those are the areas that really we should be looking to automate. And trust me, they're not mundane and menial, okay? They may be laborious, sure, I get that, but they're not mundane and menial. And I think that when you automate in those areas, the success begets success. One of the things we see all the time in Blue Prism, we're struggling to build the pipeline. We're struggling to find more opportunities for automation. We started fast, been great, everything's been wonderful, and now we're slowing down. How do we find more stuff to automate? And I think this is all bound up in this conditioning people to look for mundane and menial rather than more appropriate things to automate. And as I say, success begets success. And this was really driven home to me literally just this last week when one of our key customers in Australia, I was so impressed by this, key customer in Australia, they're a big bank. And just this past week or so, they ended up doing a automation workshop for the executive leadership team of the bank and for the technology committee of the board of the bank. Now that is as senior as it gets into the organization. And what it says to me is they've shown so much success at effectively that lower level. The success has bubbled up to the most senior people in the organization. They're saying to themselves, hang on a second, we need to understand more about this because this is fantastic. And we need to figure out how we can leverage this even more. Success begets success. And that doesn't happen because I automated mundane and menial. It happens because I automated the processes and the situations and the scenarios that are central to what that bank delivers as a bank. And I think that sort of message, I think, can apply in every organization. So not mundane and menial for me.
No. So when you talk about that specific situation, you have a bank who it finally bubbled up into the executive ranks and to the board. What can organizations do to change, or how can they change the way they think about the automation program they have to help increase their success as they're building their intelligent automation program?
They definitely have to think differently. So you have to change that thinking about what is the right place or what are the right things to be automating. I'm going to keep saying things, okay? And the reason why I keep saying things will come back in a second. So I think absolutely what I would like to see organizations do is to expand their thinking about what sort of benefits are we looking to realize, okay? And to take the more holistic perspective on what are the organizational drivers of value for us. People have been conditioned to look for, RPA is for high volume processes, standardized processes with a large human component to it. That's what they're looking for out there. So let's go and find all of the standardized processes with a big human footprint that we do lots of, because that's where all the cost is and that's where all the payback is. And that's right. Nothing wrong with that. Don't stop doing those things. But I think you'll find that, and this is when I say, when organizations come to us and say, we're struggling to find more, it's because there aren't untold numbers of those processes out there. There aren't untold scenarios that fit those characteristics. You need to think differently about it. And it's not just standardized process with human and high volume. It's things like response time. It's things like missed sales opportunities. It's things like executing transactions outside of office hours, that 24/7 business. It's customer satisfaction, all these things, drivers of organizational value. They represent real benefits to an organization, but they don't necessarily mean lots of people. They don't necessarily mean high volume, okay? I'll give you a simple example. One of our European customers, they're in the food business, and they talk about was a process that they automated, but they worked out, says, our business problem here is the customer is not happy. Here's a customer, they order food from us every month, but frankly, given the size of that customer, they should order more food. They fit the profile of someone who should be ordering more from us. Why don't they? And that was the problem. The customer saw this as actually not great service because I'm limited to an 8-hour period each day. I need 24/7. So now they automate that. It's not because we're making mistakes, just simply the facet of that business. The customer needed 24/7. The company wasn't providing it. Now, it's not FTE, it's not high volume, it's not standardized processes. It's a holistic view of these organizational drivers. So that's absolutely key. I think you've got to change that mindset. Think differently, have an expanded view of the sort of things that you're trying to solve with RPA. That's a change I'd make. I would absolutely recommend to people, don't start small, start big, take a risk. So many times we say, listen, I think I'll start with this small little project over here. It's low risk. We can use this as a learning opportunity for us. Won't this be wonderful? Okay. And all of that sounds fine. Okay. I would say start big, right? Because whatever it takes, you're going to make mistakes early on. Okay. It's going to be harder than you thought it was going to be. It's going to take longer than you thought it was going to take. And when it takes longer, is harder and costs more than you thought it was going to take, and you've only delivered something tiny, that doesn't really create a lot of success. Start with something that's really going to get people to sit up and take notice and said, oh my God, this is really incredible. What could we do with this? I think that's really important. It seems a simple thing. I don't, but success is self-fulfilling. So I say start big, don't necessarily start small. Another thing I would say, a third thing, I really do feel this. If you want to be successful in RPA, successful in automation, choose the head of automation wisely. It's an important position. It's not an easy position. It's a person who has IQ and EQ. It's a person who's got some ambition. It's a person who has a real deep understanding of the organization and the culture and the politics of the organization. I think it's a person who is tolerant to a bit of risk. They want to make a difference rather than just not want to make a mistake. And I've seen people within our customers, and I feel this really, I don't know, just looking from afar, it's really cool. The people who have been head of RPA for Blue Prism at Customer X is now Customer X's CTO, head of RPA at Customer Y, had an ambition. And I remember I met this person the very first, literally within a month or two of joining Blue Prism. I set up a meeting for them, and this person was trying to understand, how do I be successful? And their ambition was, I'm going to create the preeminent RPA COE worldwide for their particular industry. That's a great ambition, right? Those people, I think they are real indicators for success. So, those are some of the things I think are really key. They're not I didn't want to give you your typical thing, got to have governance, got to have security. I get all of that. But one of these, the intangibles, I think, that really seem to have an impact on people's ability to do more in this RPA and intelligent automation space.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I've actually heard you talk about this catchphrase as problems, not processes. And I want you to explain what you mean by that.
It goes back to this. It goes back to mundane and menial. It goes back to thinking differently about what are the benefit, what's the benefit realization for our organization. And I think that the best way to capture imagination is to show imaginative thinking, right? And this is where my problems, not processes, stems from. So much of what organizations are trying to do is they come along and they say, look, here's a process that we do. Here's how we do it today. Here's how we can improve that process. Okay. And that's the limit of their thinking. That's the scope of what they're looking for. As I say, and it's bound up in mundane and menial. It's bound up in standardized processes, lots of humans, high volume. And that's good. Look, there's nothing wrong with that. Okay. There's plenty of value that you can get from that. But don't limit your thinking to that. So don't limit your thinking just to processes. So ask yourself, where do I have a problem? Or where do we as an organization have a problem? It doesn't matter what that problem happens to be. Let's just look for problems first of all. And then we can make a determination of, is intelligent automation a solution to this problem? Maybe it won't be. Doesn't mean it is all the time. Okay. But if I'm looking for processes, I find processes. If I look for problems, I find problems. And given the tools in our kit bag at the moment with intelligent automation, AI, cognitive, we can solve a lot more problems than perhaps we used to be. And so I say to people, anytime you're saying to yourself, that's the cost of doing business, that's an area to look for. Because when I say, that's just the cost of doing business, it's a recognition that there's a problem, but there's no feasible solution to that problem. No feasible, it's the cost of doing business. And now I say, you know what? What can I do with an infinite workforce? A lot of these cost of doing business problems become in scope when I've got an infinite workforce. And I'll give you some examples to try to make it a bit more tangible. Okay. An energy retailer in Australia, as an example, they had a problem with revenue leakage. Okay. Not being able to bill for certain revenue due to what it may be, probably a whole host of things, faulty equipment and so on, but basically revenue leakage. That was We know we've got this problem. It's the intractable problem for our organization. We know it's there. There's nothing we can really do about it. It's the cost of doing business. Now, that organization, literally over a weekend, built a robot, built a Blue Prism process to solve that problem. Okay, there was no existing process. We just built an automation to solve that problem. First couple of months, $500,000 in revenue that they've been able to bill for that otherwise would have leaked away. It's not it's an existing problem. It's not an existing process. Okay, I think it's a great example. I'll give you another one. Bank in Europe. Okay, bank in Europe. I'm sure, like all banks have, the branch opens up at 9 o'clock in the morning, and you've got your fingers crossed that all the systems are working. They're generally working, but every now and again, systems being systems, they're not working. So we're crossing our fingers that everything's working. And if it's not, it's panic stations. Okay, it's unhappy customers, it's long queues, it's panic stations. It's the cost of doing business. What can you do? Why don't we just get an army of Blue Prism digital workers to log on at 4 o'clock in the morning and to run a transaction across all systems in every branch? Just a dummy transaction, just to check that things are working, so that we're not crossing our fingers at 9 o'clock in the morning. At 5 o'clock in the morning, we're able to confirm it's working. Now, again, it's not a process. You can never ask the same army of humans to do that. It's just the cost of doing business. Do it with Blue Prism. What can I do with an infinite workforce? And this is what I mean. Look for problems, business problems, not necessarily processes. And if I can use this little, just to sort of headline it with this little final statement about this, that same food company, I love them. I think they're awesome. That same food company, they had a COE that was branded the Process Automation COE. We're here for automating processes. And this is part of their, hang on a second, we're only doing what we think is about 20% of what we could be doing. So they changed their name. They rebranded themselves as the problem solvers. Just come to us with your problems, and we'll tell you whether, with the magic of technology, we can solve that problem. So it's completely changed the mindset of the organization as to what this team of people do and what this team of people can do for that organization. So problems, not processes. That's my long-winded way of saying what I mean by that.
Well, that makes total sense. So as we look at automation becoming intelligent automation, when you start adding machine learning and artificial intelligence to it, how can organizations extend their automation journey by adopting AI?
So look, I think if you've spent any time in the RPA world over the last couple of years in the intelligent automation world, you appreciate that cognitive vision, natural language processing. There's a whole bunch of typically pre-trained AI, machine learning capabilities. Effectively, we can call them skills for the digital worker that extends what that digital worker can feasibly do, extends the scope of problems that become in scope. And a lot of that is where, again, problems, not processes. So I think that is generally well understood, that those opportunities abound, that there is that capacity to extend the skills of the Blue Prism digital worker to be doing more sophisticated things, more sophisticated tasks that maybe once upon a time you'd have said that's out of scope. Again, thinking back to my earliest days in Blue Prism, I saw companies that had they'd fill out a form, if you like, of what's sort of a, what do we want to call it? It's an assessment tool to decide, is this process an appropriate process for Blue Prism? And some of the questions are there lots of documents? If you tick that, you get a big crossover here. Lots of humans, if you tick that, you get a big crossover there. We've extended that scope. I think that's well understood. I think it's not so much how can I extend my automation journey through AI, but what about how can I extend my AI journey through automation? And I think that's the more interesting area to be thinking about, because it was really driven home to me 18 months ago. The Economist, I love reading The Economist, great magazine, so insightful. And each quarter they have a technology quarterly, but this technology quarterly was all about AI. And really, the big premise of many of the articles in this whole quarterly is 10 or 12 articles all about the same sort of area, right? And many of the articles in this technology quarterly were all about AI is proving hard to adopt. Businesses are struggling to adopt AI. Businesses are realizing the shortcomings of AI. It was quite a negative, maybe it's perhaps too strong word. Say it's not the be all and end all. It's not this panacea to all our problems. It's difficult, right? And they were quoting surveys and statistics from people like PwC, like MIT, BCG, those sort of places. And some of them really were, they were very compelling statistics. 70% of organizations that had invested in AI were showing little impact to that. 70%, And they said of organizations who had a significant investment in AI, lots of money down the drain, 40% of those companies had showed zero benefit whatsoever. Now that's quite compelling figures. And the premise they were making, and this is something I've been saying for the longest time, right, is that there's more to AI than simply AI algorithm accuracy. If you want to create a solution, an operational solution that has an AI component into it, so much of the complexity of that end-to-end solution is upstream activities happening and downstream activities happening. I have to marshal data from a whole bunch of different sources, diverse sources, incompatible sources. I've got to pull all that data together. That's not easy. Okay, I feed that into my AI, spins its wheels, it weaves its magic, goes, bing, I've got an answer for you. I've got to do something with that answer. I have to integrate the results into some downstream process such that I can leverage those results. Again, that's hard. And AI in the middle, that's a lovely research project. I can make that accurate as you like with wonderful data scientists. And then I say, great, how can I use that? Oh, the solution, the operational end-to-end is the complexity. And I think that what we offer, that sort of AI world, is the ability to smooth out the upstream and downstream so that it becomes feasible. It stops being a research project and it becomes a corporate solution. And one of the great, if I think about companies of ours who are doing AI, real intelligent automation and building AI into their world, and there are people who are doing it with, AML, anti-money laundering, know your customer sort of stuff. There's people doing it with things like identity theft and fraud. There's quite a lot of people doing this sort of stuff. And so much of the pattern is a pattern of triage, where it says, I'm feeding a bunch of data into my AI system. A lot of times it's Blue Prism helping to feed that data in. AI comes up with a whole bunch of hits, a whole bunch of positives, but some of them, as we know, are false positives. Okay, maybe they're false negatives, right? They're false positives. And it's overwhelming to think I'm going to give all those false positives to an army of humans to then say, is this a real positive? Or start investigation proceedings against this company or that person or whatever. And so there's a triage there. It goes AI, it goes to Blue Prism to do a first level of shortlisting, winnowing down analysis to limit that. And then it goes to humans for harder cases or more certain cases or et cetera. And it's a great pattern. And I think it both operationalizes AI. It speaks to humans starting to do more complex and value-added tasks that are specific to humans' capabilities. It's really it's a great opportunity. So I think it's as much about how does intelligent automation make your AI real? And I think that is it's a challenge that people are having, and it's something that we can have real tangible impacts on.
Well, I would totally agree with you there. So as we see organizations building ever more complex, intelligent automation solutions, how do you measure success? I mean, especially as we mix these sophisticated hybrid workforces, with humans and digital labor.
I just wish it was just one thing. I wish I could just say, look, it's this one thing here. But of course, there's so many facets to success, as frankly, it is in any sort of strategic program of works. Okay. Anytime you're saying, here is a platform that I'm going to use across an organization to, as a strategic initiative, a strategic program, there's a lot of moving parts, but I think we all appreciate that. So look, some of the things that I think come to mind. I think, it starts right at the start. I think organizations have to evaluate it properly. I don't think they do. I don't think they do. I don't think maybe it's more the part of the world I live in. I'm living in Asia, I live in Hong Kong, I live in Asia. There's not as much footprint out here. There's not people who've had as much experience out here. If I want to find someone who knows how to implement a database, I can find 100,000 of those people this afternoon. But if I want someone who's had real experience with Blue Prism or RPA in general, those people they're short on the ground, right? So I don't think organizations really know what the keys to success are, and they evaluate for speed. They don't evaluate for long-term success. So I think organizations look to that. If I can use a simple analogy, it's like I'm trying to assemble a team of marathon runners by watching me run around the 400-meter track a couple of times. I think show big success early, right? Show tangible, create that success story. So much of what we see as a challenge for organizations is getting that buy-in, right? I need buy-in across all levels of the organization. I need buy-in from the knowledge workers at the coal face, and prove to them that you're not going to take their jobs away, and actually their life and their work-life balance and what have you is better after RPA, after Blue Prism than it was before. So buy-in at the down, but buy-in up as well. I need to be able to create those champions across all levels of the organization. And oftentimes we see that as a challenge. You've got a person who, that person was the driver for RPA in the organization. They were the driver to select Blue Prism. They really are bought in to what it can do, but maybe not widely through the organization. And so getting that mindset. So buy-in across all levels, really critical. I think it's important for organizations to realize that early success is not a guarantor of long-term success. Just because I do something well the first time doesn't mean I can just do that same thing 100 times or 100 times in either in a row or concurrently and expect the same success. Okay. So setting yourself up, understanding governance, understanding pipeline generation, understanding the cultural aspects of what intelligent automation, how it will change your organization and change the people in your organization is absolutely key. And this is why I say the head of automation is such a critical role to play in that. This is a program, not a project. Okay. And organizations really need to treat it as such. You can't it's a bit like that old phrase, a strategy is not just a series of tactics or something along those lines. Just because I can say I've got 10 projects doesn't make it a program. Independent projects managed independently, all with a thing that says, how quickly can you roll this out? That doesn't roll up to a long-term sustainable program that it needs to be if you do want to have that buy-in across the organization, have that success, etc.
Again, I think you made a lot of really good points here. It isn't just one thing. There's a number of key things that we need to look at when evaluating a program, as you mentioned it, for real success. So I want to thank you so much for your insights into this and sharing what you've seen working in the real world. If all you get out of this is the concept of looking for problems rather than processes, that I think you'll start to see the impact that intelligent automation can really have. So again, I appreciate all of your insights, and thank you for joining us today, Dan.
Thank you very much. It's been very enjoyable.
Thanks for tuning in to Transform Now. For more insightful discussions on digital transformation and more, check out our podcast channel where you'll find all of our previous episodes. To make sure you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast player. And if you like what you heard, please leave us a review. For more information about digital transformation and the future of work, check out blueprism.com to learn how Blue Prism's digital workforce is enabling enterprise transformation now.